Well, hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I want to talk about Detective Pikachu Returns, the new Detective Pikachu game for the Nintendo Switch. A continuation of the original story, where a teenage boy named Tim encounters a talking Pikachu with a foul mood, an addiction to coffee, and a brilliant intellect. It turns out that this Pikachu was the partner of Tim's father, a detective in Rhyme City, where humans and Pokémon are equal citizens. Tim's father suddenly disappeared a while ago, and Tim came to Rhyme City to look for him. And so the two of them joined forces to find Tim's father and Pikachu's former partner, and also solve all kinds of crimes and mysteries along the way. There's some conspiracy going on behind the scenes, as conspiracies usually do, with a drug that has Pokémon go berserk, shady experiments performed on the legendary Pokémon Mewtwo, and the latter one's involvement in Tim's father's disappearance. The writing or the plot wasn't all that deep, maybe a bit artificially complicated, but it was pretty obvious where the whole story would lead to. Though this game did not unravel the mystery, it made it more cryptic actually. It never showed what happened to Tim's dad, you didn't find the guy at the end. So they clearly set this up for a sequel or maybe even a series. As if the Pokémon company doesn't already have too many projects on their hands. A while after the game came out, a movie tie-in was released into cinemas, a rather successful movie, even more so by video game adaptation standards, that more or less told the same story as the game, up to a point, and then it outran it plot-wise. The movie actually cleared up the mystery and presented the painfully obvious twist. But then again, this new game takes some potshots against the movie and how it handled some story elements, so maybe now the game will go into a completely different direction. We'll see. For now we have to solve a bunch of family-friendly Saturday morning crimes involving those silly little critters we all know and love. I mean, I don't know most of them. If it's not from Gen 1, then there's, let's say, a 90% chance I've never heard of that Pokémon. But it's alright. The game is made with children and Pokémon noobs in mind, so every new Pokémon gets their own introduction scene and awkward dialogues to explain all their quirks and peculiarities. The approach to dialogues actually changed a bit from the first game. You still get to talk to bystanders and witnesses, be it humans or Pokémon, and ask predefined questions related to the case to sometimes get valuable pieces of evidence. In the last game, every NPC on the scene had you wait through a very short animation, which quickly added up to a bit of tedium and a few lines of dialogue before your questions appeared on the touchscreen. In the sequel, you still have those NPCs, but the menus appear to be a bit faster and not every NPC has their own dialogue tree. Some of them are just here for a bit of flavor and don't open up further dialogue choices. Which streamlines the whole investigation and statement gathering, but on the other hand, it tells you from the start which of those involved in the case are of importance and which are not. Which takes away a bit from the investigation. This could have been solved more elegantly by, for example, having one big conversation for tandems of human and Pokémon partner, so that you don't need to talk to one and exhaust all their dialogue options and then talk to the other, but talk to the pair of them and have some questions to be answered by the human and some by the Pokémon. With this, you'd even have less repeated or worthless answers. The actual clue-finding, puzzle-solving gameplay is rather, let's call it basic. It already wasn't that hard in the first game, but here it seems to be even easier and less demanding or hands-on. This time you mostly just go from one little dialogue to the next. Now, reading a lot of dialogues isn't unusual for many adventure games, especially for detective mysteries, but this game feels closer to a visual novel, just with a bit of running back and forth in between dialogues. The first game also had you talk to witnesses a lot and read lots of texts, but at least to me it felt like there was a bit more puzzle solving and combining of clues involved. The deduction system in the original had you put clues into a timeline to reconstruct the steps of the crime. Again, it wasn't hard in any way, but creatively designed. Now you just read all the available statements and then attempt the deduction minigame where you need to answer a single question by choosing one of your clues from a limited selection. The game even marks and highlights solvable mysteries and has Pikachu go haywire so that you can't possibly overlook it. You're mostly going through the motions in this game. It's not just easy, it gets a bit mindless, and I don't think this was necessary to make this game kid-friendly. You can't really fail in this game. Choosing an incorrect solution just has you trying again, and the same goes for missed QuickTime events. Because of that, I don't really understand why there are accessibility options to have you automatically succeed in QTEs and highlight the correct solution during the deduction minigames. There's already no way to lose in this game, so all this does is take the last bits of gameplay away. And then, all you're left with is a rather weakly written and artificial mystery story in an honestly really adorable setting full of anime tropes and contrivances. Like the heroes always getting distracted by something when they get close to the truth. And a rather cheap presentation. The visuals aren't much to talk about, though the art style itself is fine. It's nice and colorful, but nothing more really.
The music, on the other hand, is pretty good.
During conversations, you now get some changing character portraits on top of the barely moving character models, but during cutscenes, this game, once again, like the past few Pokemon games, shows Nintendo's or the Pokemon companies or whoever else is responsible's laziness and stinginess. Whenever a scene requires a somewhat more elaborate character animation, the game just fades to black and fades back in when the action in question has been concluded.
You don't really see Pikachu climbing onto something. It always cuts away, or there's something in the way, or there's a weird camera angle. And you also never see anyone grab anything from the ground. The game always cuts away and then it appears in their hands.
You barely see two characters physically interacting with each other. Because of that, cutscenes look really awkward. If they didn't want to create some well-animated scenes, then they could have just used still images and the like, maybe in the style of notebook sketches, or with some filter on top to have it look like a painting or something. It would have looked a lot better than these cheap cutscenes. And even with all those shortcuts, the game still can't keep a stable frame rate. Though to be fair, this isn't nearly as much of a problem as it was in the last few mainline Pokemon games. There are also some weird errors and glitches, like when all the interaction prompts are marked as already activated even though you haven't interacted with a single one. Or the game using the wrong animations or character models, like for example a side quest where you need to deliver leaf clothes to freezing Pokemon, but on their model they already wear the leaves and don't look any different afterwards. And on the topic of side quests, There are quite a few in this game, multiple ones within any given case, but so far none of them provide any challenge or depth. You always just have to find one or maybe two Pokemon of a certain species, and those are just standing around somewhere within the area. Everyone is just standing around within the area. Once I had to track their scent, but that was during a segment that already had me tracking a Pokemon's scent, so even then it wasn't really anything special. And it seems there's such a mini-game segment in every chapter, and it does tie into a few of the side quests. But there's really not that much to it. It does change up the pace, but it's very shallow. There's also no reward or benefit to get from completing side quests. No items, no cosmetics, no additional clues to change up the pacing of a case, no change in the environment, nothing. They are just here to maximize the amount of time you spend in each chapter, in the cheapest way possible. And on that note, the game really drags in a lot of places. Be it with awkward dialogues the characters stumble through, or their obsession with only just slightly hinting at things and then not wanting to talk about it anymore, or the weirdly paced cases themselves, where you have to run back and forth a lot, or are arbitrarily prevented from finding certain clues or examining certain objects or places until the game deems it time to do so, where you can't ask certain questions the first time you meet a witness, but have to travel back to them later in the case. Again, a lot of detective mysteries do that, but in the better representatives of that genre, the writing actually carries the whole experience. Dialogues are well written, there's some tension to the story, and every line of text gives you more insight into the mystery. This game's writing, while there isn't much there, feels bloated, full of empty fluff and not witty enough to be enjoyable. Yeah, the cute Pokemon alleviate this a bit, but it doesn't help that much when the dialogues are just boring. And don't say to me it's made for kids. The mainline games are made for kids as well, and so is the show and the manga, and those are way more engaging. Not necessarily better written, but a lot more exhilarating. It's also a bit weird how the game, or both games for that matter, try to include mature socio-political themes but still retain the comprehension level of an elementary school book. The world building also got a bit weaker than in the previous game. Not that it was that great to begin with, but it retained some weird changes from the movie, even though it takes potshots at the movie. The Pokemon in this world aren't just mere pets or wild animals. They have high levels of intelligence. Even outside the setting of Rhyme City, they work and perform complicated tasks alongside their human partners. So I already found it really weird in the movie when this woman made random Pikachu sounds towards the Pikachu detective, when we know they have an actual language, that they can converse with each other and understand humans. And sometimes humans can even understand, or at least intuit, what Pokemon are saying. So this woman saying Pika 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 to a sentient, intelligent being equates to some racist and or idiot shouting ching chang chang at Asian people. But now, in this game, they doubled down on this weird lore change. Characters actually say that Pokemon cannot understand humans. And they even find it weird when a human talks to their Pokemon partner. Why? Since when? It's completely normal in the rest of the Pokemon world, but in this city, where Pokemon are actually equal to humans, it is considered strange. Also, people do talk and give unconventional or unintuitive commands to their Pokemon. So it's really just inconsistent writing. That wouldn't have happened if the game just didn't try to cram the movie into its lore. Yeah, the game is all over the place. I guess it's good fun for kids who just want to have a game about this cute little Sherlock Holmes Pikachu who solves wacky cases involving even more cute Pokemon. Then again, there's quite a lot to read in this game, so those kids shouldn't be too young, and then I'm not sure if they'd really have fun with this baby's first adventure gameplay. So maybe it's more for adult, long-time Pokemon fans who want a more casual experience. It's good fun as long as you don't take it too seriously, and I mean, this little Pikachu with his little deerstalker is incredibly adorable, and the game emphasizes this point all the time, and I do get some enjoyment out of this. But I wouldn't really call it a good game. It's just too shallow and too cheap. But you know what? Regardless of whether you like this game or not, I wish you the greatest of days. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.